Thank you, Dr. Delamater. Well, it's always tradition, of course, to have a graduation speaker, and we acknowledge that the words are not always remembered. And one of the things that we've decided to do over the next couple of years, at least, is to invite back some who sat in your chairs as graduates and have done well in various areas of life. And so today, if you have your program with you, we have with us Chris Skaggs. Chris grew up in Southern California. When he finished high school, he spent 2 years in community college, and then he went into the Navy, where he served as a software specialist in aviation administration. After he left the Navy after 4 years, he went to graphic design school in San Diego, and then he chose to come to a place that we know as George Fox University. He graduated from George Fox in 1999 with a bachelor's degree in a subject that you might not expect, history. He is a 12-year veteran of the web and mobile software industry and the founder of Soma Games, a video gaming company with a Christian worldview. Soma and its sister company, Code Monkeys. I've always found that name fascinating. I told him before that, it brings up the image of the commercial that you've seen of trunk monkeys. So I was trying to figure out if he could tell me what the connection was, but he hasn't yet. They've delivered software applications to some of the country's most discerning clients, including Intel, Four Seasons, Comcast, and the Aruba networks. With a team of roughly a dozen programmers and artists, Soma Games roared into the mobile sector in 2009 and has delivered more than 60 apps in just over 2 years, including his most recent one, that our own Aaron Kays has worked on, called Wind Up Robots, Wildfire Fighter, and Bok Choy Boys. Chris also writes and speaks on topics surrounding the rapidly changing mobile application environment at venues such as TechStart, Serious Play, and App Up Elements. He is married to Rebecca, who is a graduate in philosophy in 2000 from George Fox University and is currently applying to grad school. They have 2 children, Odin and Elsie. Would you welcome Mr. Chris Skaggs?
Okay, seriously, like when I signed up for this, I was imagining like 30 people. So, okay, this is a little nerve-wracking for me. For those of you who are a little bit more familiar with the technology, I'm going to give you some flash words. There is a hashtag that I've started. It's GFU Grads. And so any of you who know what that means, get to it. There's also a quiz on that thread that you will need to know about later. So I want to start with that to just kind of award the people who are with me in this world and punish those of you who aren't. So I was also told by my good friend that I have to say happy birthday, Marissa, and I'm sure that will be on tape for all prosperity. Now, I remember a moment very clearly when I was a young man. I must have been about 10, so probably a young man is stretching it. But I was sitting like this on the living room floor watching Chips with my folks. And I remember very clearly this moment because it caught my attention where all of a sudden I was transported from the California Highway Patrol into a world where there were suddenly flying, spinning corporate logos. And I had seen for the first time a computer-generated image in 3D, and it seemed like there was this spaceship that was just zooming along through deep space and had found this artifact all rendered in chrome, and I was smitten. I had this idea that computer graphics had to be the absolute coolest thing I had ever seen or ever would. And I made up my mind at that moment that that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a computer animator. And I told my folks, and they nodded politely. You know how important it is. You have to be a doctor or a lawyer, son, not one of those, glitchy, geeky people. But they were very kind. But I was very enthusiastic about that whole thing. And though throughout school, certainly various interests came and blossomed, and they all had their interest at the time, whether that was drama or sports or whatever else. And certainly I got interested in other things. But that computer thing never went away. And so when I got out of high school, I joined junior college without really a whole lot of knowledge on what to do next. And I was fired up. I was going to be a computer animator, man, and that was hot. There were California raisins dancing around, and Will Vinton's studio was a big deal, and all kinds of cool things were happening. And then I sat down with lunch for some just random stranger, and you do that thing that you always do. You're like, hey, what's your major? Where are you from? And I said, well, I want to be a computer animator. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, why would you want to do that? That's got to be the most boring, tedious job I can imagine. And my heart died. The truth is that I'd never really done any research, right? I mean, I was just living on enthusiasm. And I didn't know what the job was about, so for all I knew, he was right. And who wants the job of absolute, complete tedium? And so then I just wandered. And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And so I did what a lot of people do, is you just do the next thing that shows up. And for me, that was the Navy. Now, I don't want to tell this tale the wrong way and say that somehow that this wasn't God working in my life. I'm not going there. But we need to make sure that we always draw the distinction between the things that God can redeem, because God can win with a pair of twos, right? There's the things that God can redeem, but we cannot make the mistake of thinking that a redeemed life is the same as the life that God intended all along. So even though my story will end up a little happier, at that moment I was not on plan A. I was wandering, and my calling was gone. Because of one guy who I didn't know and had no reason to believe or respect had just dropped some fearful comment. And my calling was done. Okay, which brings me to my topic of calling, actually. Even though it's one of the most important topics, I think, in all of Christendom, it is also one of the most misused. And so I would like to try to reclaim a couple terms here. Now, God is infinite, right? It's okay, you can say something. Yes, thank you. See, that was easy. Now, this one might be a little bit harder. We are finite. Is that also true? See, not so hard. Okay. We are also made in his image, every one of us. Is that also true? And just to be 100% clear, the word says that we are made men and women in his image. Don't let anyone tell you, ladies, that it's not exactly as true for you. But how is it then that finite people can reflect in any way the infinite God? The answer to that question is actually as important as it is profound and simple. One little bit at a time. Just like we might look at a child and remark, wow, she has her father's eyes. We must each learn to look at the person next to us with the full knowledge that we are sitting next to an eternal being. As C.S. Lewis puts it, it is a serious thing to live in the society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day be a creature that if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as if you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. Now, as important as it is to recognize that eternal spark in the people next to you, it is more important to recognize it in yourself. To never let the world tell you that you are merely mortal. You are not. I know that that's the thing we also have to grapple with, but it is more important that you are immortal. That your original glory is older and truer than any original sin. You are a unique reflection of the living God. You are a son or daughter of the living God and the King of the universe. Whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, you were created for eternal things. No one of us can possibly reflect, though, all of the aspects of God. As an infinite being and finite things, we are only asked to reflect that part of his being that was embedded within us from our creation. That's a good thing. That's the good news. You aren't expected to be, balanced in God's kingdom. You are expected to be fully and 100% yourself. You bear compassion of the holy God that brings peace where there is strife. You have the heart of the fierce warrior God beating within you like a stag running across a field. Feel it. Know it. You bear the beauty of the sovereign Lord in a way that is so peaceful and so glorious that you need do nothing but stand and testify to his goodness. We are only asked to be ourselves. Your calling is simply this, to be 100% you. Don't make it more complicated than that. Don't make it all about a task or a job or a thing you have to say or do. It's just to be yourself. Now, I hope you see that as good news and not bad news, because calling is one of the things that gets screwed up very quickly. There's this thing that can happen in Christendom where, especially if people are sort of uncareful about their things, this idea of calling can seem more like a burden. And it can become something like this. God has prepared these special things for you. Don't screw it up. That's a drag. We don't need that, okay? But what if instead what it is that God has prepared the most awesome, cool vacation that you can ever imagine. It has all of the coolest things that you ever wanted to do. I don't know if that's a zip line or to, study Homer's steps or to do whatever it wants. This thing was put in you, and that is what he has invited you to do and to be. It's a glorious, great thing. What you will find if you listen to your heart is that the thing you most want to do is the thing you were made to do. It's a funny thing. Jesus so often appeals to our desires. And he promises us scandalous rewards to be part of the kingdom. Stuff that appeals, frankly, to what we might call our base nature. You want a crown, you want riches, you want streets of gold and all this kind of stuff. It's not about that the rewards are somehow bad. There is a natural reward and there is an unnatural reward. The natural rewards are good. So don't let them be taken away from you in your sense of calling. So let me ask a couple other things, or rather be clear about a couple things. Your calling is not a job. All of you who just graduated, your calling is not to be a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse or an accountant or anything else. That's not what your calling is. It's also not a role that you have. So especially folks in the audience who are watching your children or your spouses graduate, your calling is not your role to be a father or a husband or a wife or a son. Those aren't your calling. It's not a competency. It's not something that you're good at. And this is one of the places where we might hear, you have a gift, which means you have an obligation. Don't go there. Although your gifts can often be cues to your calling, they are not your calling. And especially don't think that your calling is a task, some sort of life work. All those things are good, don't get me wrong. The things that we put ourselves to, especially when we put all of our best strength into them, those things are good. But by definition, they are all temporal. They are not eternal, which means that none of those things are anywhere near big enough to contain and circumscribe the glory of your life. Your job is to bring the full weight and the full glory of your unique life to this world, and then let them deal with it. Some of you are going to be problems. You're going to be troublemakers. That's generally been me. Some of you are going to be peacemakers. Some of you come with the sword, some come with the bow, some come with peace in their wings and healing in their lips. Others come to fight. Whatever you were made to be that. Don't buy into this thing about how I need to balance these certain things. The kingdom isn't about balance. The kingdom is about fulfillment and doing what God asked you to do. A hammer does not try to balance itself with the turning of screws. In fact, if a hammer tried to turn screws, it would be mitigating what it was made for, wouldn't it? God made you special. And the world so much wants to homogenize you. It wants to harness you to the plow. And Jesus is very clear, do not put that yoke upon you. Don't. His yoke is the one that's easy. His yoke is the one that you should care about. But it is so tempting, isn't it? And not only, I don't just mean about the world, how it wants to tempt us into things. It's also about this thing that'll happen where we feel like we want to serve God and we're passionate about that. But there's this little subtle thing that can happen that we might think there's only a few legitimate Christian pursuits to serve the kingdom, so to speak. And that might be, say, a minister or a worship leader or a missionary. And those things are awesome, don't get me wrong, but it's not what everybody is called to. So if you're called to be an accountant, and I'm messing up with my own terms here. If you are moving into that job of anything that's outside of that normal sort of Christendom look, that is still the field. And there's still so much for you to do and to be, for your light to shine in those places. Remember that Jesus says that a city on a hill cannot be hidden. He doesn't say it shouldn't be. He says it can't. So just be yourself and let the world see that. Which, by the way, in case this isn't clear, especially for folks up in the stands, there's a lot of non-traditional graduates, I understand. your calling is also not tied to your age at all. I don't care how young you are. I don't care if you're 5 sitting in here. I don't care if you're 95. Your calling hasn't ended. You're still in the army. And you're still part of God's task on this world. It is the path of ever-increasingness to live in your calling. It will never end. There will always be more of you to come to fruition. There will always be another aspect of your life, another image of God to bring forth to the world. But know that it is also not the path of comfort. It is not the path of getting it right so that I can have a nice life. If you are too far away from discomfort in your life, there's a good chance you've retreated from the battle that God is fighting. Don't mistake what Paul makes clear, that this world is under the power of the evil one. If you're under a comfortable world, there's a good chance it's because you're a long way from the front line. There are also no high callings and no low callings. Being a professor, being a president, being all those things, they're wonderful, but it is no higher than being a wife, than making silly video games. There are only children enjoying the house of their Lord, sitting under the tutelage of their papa, of their loving father. When Moses asks at the burning bush, "Who are you?" God simply answers, "I am," or "I'm just me. I am 100% at all times and in all ways myself," which is a great precedent to follow. There's no coyness, there's no fear, there's no mask. It's just God. So we do the world no favors by just pretending to be less than we are, for fear of intimidating someone or making them feel less. Instead, you do your best to ask honestly, like it says in Acts 9:6, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" Now, I started this tale by telling about how my calling and my heart got crushed back in junior high school. Well, 15 years later, God worked a long series of events to bring me right back to that calling. And as weird as it may seem, I find myself now doing computer animation. But now it is in such a different place. Because he's shown me the way, he's matured me back up into a place where now I see that there is a place where I can use this silly, goofy, pointless medium to speak into people's lives. And we have been given so many opportunities to speak into classes and conferences and just individual lives. When you're signing some contract with a vendor, and when that's all done, he says, "By the way, we hear that you guys pray. And my kid is sick. Would you pray for my kid?" Because I don't believe in that Jesus stuff. But, all of a sudden, you guys are the guys I trust. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is if you're there with the Father. And I got to ask something. I don't want to presume just because this is a Christian school that everyone here knows my dad. It's not enough to know about him. It's not. As a history major, thank you, Carrie, wherever you are. As a history major, I learned a lot about Abraham Lincoln and Dwight Eisenhower, maybe more than I needed to. But I don't know him. I don't know Dwight. And until we get into glory, I never will. It's not enough to know about Jesus. You have to know him as a person, as a relationship, and that will change the way you live your life. That will change everything about when you live in that house of God under his fatherhood. Okay, I need to wrap up because I think that I'm running late already. But I got to give you a couple practical things as you go about this. One of the big cues to your calling is to understand the story you're living in. This isn't your individual story. This is the bigger story. If you don't understand the battle that God is waging over your heart, if you don't understand the great giant epic that is God's story, then you will have mis-expectations about what's going to happen next. When you go to McDonald's and you get a little package of French fries, and maybe they're a little too salty, it's not too weird, because it's part of what you expect. When I pay $8 for pan frites at Morton's, those better be right. Do you see what happens about your expectations? Do you think that this is a world that there's nothing important going on, there's nothing at risk? Do you think that you're not valuable and in the middle of a battle? Because if you do, then when a bullet goes past your head, you don't think about it. You realize, oh, that's weird. But when you recognize the epic tale that's going on around you, and you know that you have been invited to be a part of that, baby, that's different. That is a whole different worldview, and your expectations suddenly become very different. So that you interpret the events of your life in an entirely different way. You start to understand there's moments in your life where God is testing you. There's moments in your life where the enemy is set against you, and you respond differently. You also need to understand your desires. Philippians 2:13 says, "For God is working in you, giving you the desire and the ability to do what pleases him." Don't think that your desires are false indications of who you're supposed to be. Now, some of them are. We all know that we get desires from our flesh and the world, and there's bad places for desires. But there's also a deeply holy place. That's why I said you will find that the thing you most want to do is the thing that you were made to do, because that desire was put in your heart by God. Find that thing and treasure it. That is the pearl of great price, that I will sell everything I have to live that life. And if you don't know that part about Jesus, don't you think you're maybe living short of what he offers? Not necessarily what you need to do, but what's available to you. In that same essay, Lewis says, it's as if our desires are not too strong but too weak, that we piddle around with things like sex and ambition, when in fact we have been invited into infinite joy. Now, this is supposed to be fun, going back to the desires thing. I want to be clear about that. Yes, God lives in a battle. Yes, we are called into that battle, but your joy will come from this. Your joy will come from... Why do I keep looking at all this faculty, not the students? I just realized you guys are all up front. Now, you don't need to hear this, do you? Or maybe you do. Sorry. This is a part of infinite joy for y'all. Embrace that. Seek after that. Don't submit to the pressure to rush the field. Because right now there's going to be a lot of people saying, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next with your life? With the whatever it is, debt that you just racked up, you better figure this out right now. One of the best principles we can learn is to wait. It's okay to wait. It really is. It's okay to wait on the sovereign Lord. You know why? Because he has something to say to you. It's funny. People will go into a season like this and they'll say, I was in my wilderness experience. There's two kinds of wilderness experiences, and it matters all the world which kind you mean, because Jesus was called into the wilderness by the Holy Spirit. It was a time of testing and trial and temptation, and he came out of that with power. The Israelites went into the wilderness because they didn't trust God. And they spent 40 years wandering because they folded, because they wouldn't fight for what God called them to do. So which wilderness you approach is a big deal. The final thing, so we've got your journey, we've got your desires, but you also have to understand your own story, which is something that President Baker spoke about. Your own story has all the cues you need for where God's calling you. You just have to have eyes to see. You have to be willing to look at your own life in a mythic sense, so that everything that has gone into your life up to this moment is for a purpose. It's God teaching you. It's him sharing with you. It's him molding you into what you were made to be. All these things matter. Use those as cues to understand what he's asking of you. Remember, Jesus didn't go through all that he went through so that you could go to church. Word? Jesus did what he did, suffered what he suffered, gave up humanity to be made in the likeness of sinful flesh so that you could be free. That freedom is more important than anybody bugging you to get this done. Do not trade that for anything. Now I'm going to finish, if I may, this opportunity to bless you, if that's okay. I think that blessing is one of the things that we feel a little bit shy about now in our culture, and yet it is so common to the thing that God asks of us and the way that he experiences his life. We're shy about it. We think it's arrogant to presume that I have a blessing to share, and we feel shy about receiving a blessing. But it's simple. May the Lord bless you, and may he keep you. May the Lord cause the light of his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen? All right. Anybody who's on the Twitter stream, if you've answered the question, and for the rest of you who are out of this, how many bottles of wine did Jesus make at Cana? How many? Zero? Like nobody knows? You guys are a religious school, right? Am I in the right place? What's the text? John 2:6. How many? Who's the math teacher? It says that he had 6 stone jars, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. In bottles, that's somewhere between 120 and 180 bottles of wine for a party that was already drunk. Is our God generous or what? You live in that generosity and you'll be doing all right.